to wake up the body and to work out the kinks and the stickiness that we acquire at nighttime sleeping that I do. I think most people wake up pretty stiff. And so that's okay. When we stretch through that first thing in the morning stiffness, we can be much more mobile and feeling open and loose and pain-free the rest of the day. Moving the spine, total flexion. Dropping the head down, dropping the crown of the spine, tailbone down, arching the spine up. And reversing that to full spinal extension. Exhaling to cat pose, full spinal flexion. Inhaling to cow pose, full spinal extension. Pushing the butt back to heels for child's pose. Moving forward through tabletop, pressing the hips down to the ground, belly down. Bring elbows underneath the shoulders. For the belly down TV watching position, Sphinx pose. Moving the head around. X-axis, left and right, looking over the shoulders. Y-axis, looking up and down. Actually leading with the eyes. So what we're literally doing is simply what the head and eyes and the neck are meant to do. And if you're sitting for long hours at a desk staring at a computer screen, you're doing the opposite of what I'm doing right now, which is total inactivity with your gaze and with your head movement. So it's important to keep the nutritious movement going every day. Likewise, the spine is doing the opposite when sitting at the desk. The spine is curling forward rather than doing a back bend, an extension like this. Reversing this, pushing back to child's pose again. Breathe deeply. Breathe into your belly. Feel the belly expand to the thighs. Feel that resistance at your waist, at your thighs. Breathe into the resistance. Keep finding more space for the breath to go. Feel the breath expand your body. Smooth, controlled breathing through the nose. Coming back forward again through tabletop, hips down to the knees down, cobra position. This is a neutral position between Sphinx or between cobra and upward facing dog. So if you're feeling stiff, it's your knee contact on the ground that you're going to be at while pushing up through your arms, wrists underneath the shoulders. So on the two ends of this stretch are actual cobra with hips down. It's a little more bend in the back to get the hips down and keeping the shoulders back and chest up, looking up. And then if we push a little more through our hands and push the tops of the feet to the ground, with the hands and the tops of the feet being the two strong contact points with the ground. That's upward facing dog. Slight difference, right? And then that makes the lower back feel achy at the moment, so I'm going to reverse it again to child's pose, counterposing that back bend. Keeping that spinal flexion from child's pose, pushing up to cat pose, pushing the middle of my spine upwards. So I drop the tailbone down, drop the crown of the head. Dropping the belly and chest down as I raise my tailbone and raise the crown of my head. This next pose, Anahatasana, heart-melting pose, is going to look similar to child's pose. Some people don't even have the flexibility in child's pose, maybe because it's at their knees and quadriceps, to be able to push the butt back to their heels. So when I instruct them in child's pose, what they end up doing is, rather than being able to get their butt backwards, they just kind of drop their chest straight down. But it's a different pose, and it's still good, so it has its benefits. Anahatasana. So my hips are still over my knees. I'm reaching forward just to sink my chest down towards the ground. Pushing myself back farther, butt to heels, child's pose. Walking my hands off the mat to the right. Keeping my butt where it is over the heels, doing a lateral bend at the spine for a side bend, child's pose. So bending to the right. I feel this in my left side body as I reach out a little bit more with my left hand. I can feel it through my left armpit. Walking my hands back through center, again keeping my butt where it is with the heels, walking hands off the left side of my mat. Walking hands back to center, push myself up to tabletop, keep pushing the spine, middle of the spine upward, dropping the tailbone, dropping the crown of the head, cat pose. Inhaling, lifting the tailbone, lifting the crown of the head, dropping belly and chest down, spinal extension and cow pose. Exhale to cat. Curling the toes under. Push my butt back to heels. Gonna kind of stretch my toes in extension, stretching the bottom of the foot, kneeling upright here. Leaning forward, reaching forward to grab the ground. Gonna push my hips up and backwards, kind of like moving towards downward facing dog. See how much length you can get in your arms. Making good contact with the ground, with your mat, is important.
lengthen and widen through your fingers to widen and press your hands, your palms against the mat as much as you can to get as much contact with the mat as possible. This is always important in any pose where we're grabbing the ground, to have openness in the hands for stability, to make as much contact with the ground as possible. So keep length and openness to the arms, to the shoulders, as you're directing your chest towards your thighs. And lower knees back down. I'm keeping the toes curled under still because I want to stretch those toes in extension still. So I said this recently. 2 days ago, I educated that one of the definitions of an inversion is simply getting the head below the heart. Downward facing dog does that. Like that shape that I was just in. You can feel that blood rush, blood circulation to the head. Especially when you come back out of it and reverse that circulation again, you can feel it. It's good for you. I feel sore between my shoulder blades, like in the rhomboid area. So I'm drawing those back. I'm rotating my shoulders back. Now I'm going to take my shoulder blades in the other direction by stretching an arm across the chest, squeezing it into the chest. Widening my arms back out to embrace the world with my chest, presenting it forward, and then reverse, taking the opposite arm across the chest, squeeze it in. When teaching beginners, if we're doing something like this for an arm stretch, what are we doing with the rest of the body? Most people aren't used to being on the ground, sitting on the ground. It takes flexibility, range of motion. And so like kneeling here, some people might be fatiguing in their knees and their quadriceps already. And so I wouldn't know that unless I see you and if we're communicating in some way. So some people don't have flexibility in the knees here in this position to be able to remain in Vajrasana, kneeling upright. So they may prefer to be seated like this, but lots of people also don't have flexibility here either in Sukhasana. When we have tightness on whatever muscles are underneath in the shape that we're making, those are really tight. It pulls our back backwards. So if that's comfortable, you can do that. But really, if you're really tight, the only way to get comfortable being on the ground is to get your butt up a little higher. So no, you're not truly all the way on the ground, but you're still a lot closer to the ground and using more range of motion than if you were seated up high in a chair. So it's kind of like graduating yourself, your range of motion, back down towards the ground as part of your training process of your flexibility and mobility. So like I have this one bolster here. When I first went to an Iyengar instructor, Iyengar specializes in perfect postural alignment. And by the way, posture is actually the most underrated aspect of fitness. So in aiding the body with equipment, with props for postural alignment, just seating on the ground here like this, I knew I was inflexible for the most part going into yoga, and I've been doing it for 3 years, and I thought I knew yoga. I know the yoga poses, I don't need that much assistance, but no. I was recommended to this instructor, Bruce Roger, who was very much a stickler about good alignment, and so since he could see that my stiffness was taking me out of alignment, just sitting here like this. On top of this, he took a stack of blankets this high, to my butt way up high. And then there was more additional alignment instruction from there, sitting on mats. Rolling the head around. Shaking out the shoulders, shaking out the body. Shaking is important for keeping the body loose. Like on a physiological chemistry level, we're shaking out muscle congestion like lactic acids. It also tells our nervous system to let go, stop trying to hold on to everything so tightly. Be loose. You can be loose and be strong at the same time. So, strength training for your muscles is its own practice, which also needs to be done. And it is not contradictory towards being loose and flexible. Both are important to train for. Equally important. Doing some basic quadped rolling movements here. Just utilizing that ground mobility. Just like our primal ancestors are gaining that range of motion back. That nutritious movement. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. I'll be having this meetup on the beach at Murdoch's. Hopefully you can join me. I posted it. It's on the Galveston Yoga Meetup page. Should be visible there. Sometimes they don't always show up on the timeline like the main page of the meetup group. You have to click on events. So yeah, ideally I want to do Thursdays at 9 a.m. and Saturdays at 9 a.m. on the beach at Murdoch's. So, here's my yoga block. So this can be a useful tool for stretching in a few different ways. Very simply, one way you can use this, simple way to word it, is just to lay your back across it. It's going to stretch you, and the pressure is going to be kind of like massage pressure at the same time into your back. So, again, like I'm feeling my soreness and tightness between my shoulder blades, like the wrong blades. So I'm going to get it right there. I'm doing, like the full body good morning stretch, reaching my fingers all the way overhead, and also pushing my toes in the opposite direction.
And then relaxing into it, breathing deeply. Notice the openness this creates in the chest. Again, this is a reversal from what the postural patterns that the body is usually stuck in. It's important to unstick the body. Always counter stretch it and just stretch the body in every direction. Doing some Y-axis muscle activation in my neck here. So we have muscles in the front side of our neck that we tend to not notice. The scalenes and the SCM. And they usually get stuck in shortened positions, again, being head forward, desk posture, or if we're looking down at our cell phone screen all the time, these get shortened. So it's important to lengthen them and strengthen them. Always shooting to do both of those things all the time in yoga. So as I roll from side to side, I can feel the edge of the yoga block press into the scapula. And not literally the scapula as a bone, but there's muscles within the body, fascias of the scapula. Like the, well, specifically it's pressing into the muscle called infraspinatus. So we have lots and lots of scapular muscles that we neglect, but they're very important to keep tuned up because they do scapular movements. They do postural movements, supporting the shoulders to resist gravity all the time. And so, if you have, shoulder back pain, it could be because of dysfunction in any one of those scapular muscles. It may not be the muscle that you feel the pain in, but one of those muscles is bound up, keeping the scapula in a bad position. It's causing other muscles to overwork. So come book a therapy session with me and we can get into each and every one of those scapular muscles if you like. Okay. Planting the feet. Interested in doing a shoulder bridge. Taking that from underneath me. Pushing the hips up towards the ground with hips towards the sky. With my contacts at the ground being the bottoms of my feet. And the shoulders, the outer edges of my feet are parallel to each other. So as I'm pressing through my feet, I feel both the inner and the outer edges of the feet pressing equally into the ground. Our contact with the ground is important for all the other working muscles above it to fire and activate right, to keep everything else in line.
usually I exercise the discipline of nostril breathing and ujjayi breathing. In my yoga asana, you notice I was doing exhalations through the mouth there, like through pursed lips. As I was aware, I was blowing out tension that wasn't going to pass through my nose. So it's like when we're running, when we're doing cardiovascular work, aerobic work I should say, we get to a certain level of oxygen need intake. We also get to a point where we have a certain level of carbon dioxide output need. And when you have more efficient muscles and mitochondria, you produce less of these carbon toxins, but you push yourself to a certain degree and then you're going to be producing these carbon toxins and you have to shed them. At lower levels, you can keep breathing out through your nose. At higher levels, you have to shed them stronger and faster by blowing out through your mouth. So yeah, we store stress and tension in our bodies in all sorts of different ways, and stress is simultaneously a psychological and a physical or physiological phenomenon. And so even on the physical level, we store stress in numerous different ways in numerous kinds of tissues. It's in our nerves, it's in our muscle tissues, it's in our blood. Blood is a tissue. There's different evidences of stress in the different aspects of our body that we have to blow out, shake out, shed in order to keep everything loose and working well. Rolling the hips to the side, rotating them. Keeping the shoulders heavy so that the shoulders don't roll all the way around. Keeping the twist. So we tend to think of twists as being lower back stretches. We have a lot of connection between the sacrum, which is the base of the spine, and the pelvis in twist actions. And also, as my gluteal muscles are rolling along the ground, feeling that ground pressure, it's actually kind of massaging them. And I can particularly feel that because they're sore right now, so I can feel that contact with the ground as the greater trochanter of my femur, thigh bones are rolling over the ground. And then rolling all the way over to one side. Side lying on the ground. Got my underside arm supporting my head. My upper side arm is going to push into the ground to bring myself upright. Now the upper side arm can also assist pushing down the ground. As my trunk is coming upright, I can then take my far side leg to cross under the other. So yeah, that's a lateral push-up from side lying, which is the most healthy, neutral way to sit yourself upright without jarring your spine. It's hardly a natural movement pattern to just sit straight up You know, it's like an abdominis rectus movement, you know, the sit-up. You know, when do you see people do that? Yeah, we don't actually use abdominis rectus much. There's lots of deeper core muscles that are actually much more important. Coming back down to demonstrate, you know, the muscles that are required to hold the lumbar spine against the ground when I hover my heels off the ground. You know, as I bend my knees up, it makes it easier. And smooth my heels hovering along the ground becomes more difficult. So anyway, the shape here of hollow body, it's activating deeper core muscles, and it's really important to really hold everything together between upper body and lower body to create functional compound movements, practical movements. I probably can't even do a sit-up. Like, I don't have anyone holding my feet, but I don't work on sit-ups. If I use momentum with my arms, maybe? Okay, let's watch this. Alright, so here's the hollow body low boat pose. High boat pose. Look at that. So okay, I use momentum with my legs, you know, to kind of help me up with that. Alright. Deer pose. Other side. Alright, so again, this is my yoga and therapy room. If you book a private session, we've got this beautiful space right here to use. Like as if you want to take me up on my offer to get into all your scapular muscles with my hands to break up those adhesions in there. Or if you want a full body Swedish massage to increase blood circulation systemically across your body to help flow more blood into all of your muscles, to help them rejuvenate from that blood physiological level. You know, like as I said, you know, we store stress and tension and pain, for that matter, in all the different tissues of our body, whether it's the nerves, the muscle fibers, the connective tissues like fascia, or the blood. You know, we have crap that goes on in our blood, you know, from acid to, you know, the good things, the nutrients and the electrolytes that blood transports to our muscles. You know, are all those nutrients making it to our muscles from our blood like the way they should, or are there blockages happening there?
things that don't show up on clinical diagnostic imaging. There's lots of things going on in the muscular body that don't show up in clinical diagnostical imaging, but they're keeping us from being the best versions of ourselves. And if we tune in, we can feel it. Yoga is not just a mechanical process of getting our bodies in the poses. It's also an energetic process, and it's a conscious process of tuning into the body. It may start with consciously being aware of creating alignment in our body, as we make structural alignment in the asanas, the poses. But then when we breathe deeply, we're then introducing the next element, and we're tuning into more aspects of our body and becoming more consciously aware of more and more of what's happening. And the breath in itself is the movement that's happening as we hold a pose, and as our blood is also moving in our body as we hold a pose, we can then use yoga and the asana practice, become more and more aware of the nuances that are happening in our body, become more aware of the sensations, become more aware of tightnesses, little micro pains that are happening in our body. And eventually we learn to become our own physician, because we're more tuned in to what's going on in our body than what a physician, someone who's external to ourselves, can really understand what's going on.